All right, if you're watching this video, I bet you are interested in learning how to apply fiberglass waterproofing fabric to a shower niche. So hopefully we can help you out. I am renovating my shower, and this was a problem that I came across, or a challenge. In addition to how do you apply the waterproofing fabric to all of your seams and whatnot. So hopefully this can help you. We're going to get started here. So I'm dealing with Redgard. If you've not used this stuff before, it's a liquid waterproofing membrane. You're supposed to apply it about 25 mils thick, according to the instructions, dry, for it to be completely waterproof. So we're going to start off with this fabric. I'll put links down below in the description, but this is a kind of a generic waterproof fiberglass fabric that you're supposed to apply. It's about 6 inches wide, and you can cut it down to length accordingly pretty easily with a scissor. So what I'm going to be doing first is dry cutting everything. In other words, it sticks to the wall really easily. You don't need anything wet. Everything's dry at this point, but I'm just cutting it down to size, laying everything out. This goes over any seams that I have that I want to be ultra waterproof, right? I mean, the Redgard is waterproof as well, but over time, if your joints are not sealed with this fabric, you're going to have failure and a problem. So the bottom shelf, this is what it looks like. From left to right, it's one continuous strip. You don't need to make any fancy cuts, and it lips up just a little bit in the back and a little bit in the front. So you can use the 6-inch wide to take care of that bottom. Now, the corners will need to be taken care of like this. I learned this technique in another YouTube video. And basically you take a little corner and you make a little cut just like this, and then you fold it. You'll get another angle here in a minute, and you kind of put that in the corner as such. I know my hand is blocking it. Like I said, I'll show you another angle here, but it kind of sits like that. There we go. So again, I'm just dry fitting, making sure my cuts are to size. And then we'll take another little piece here, a couple inches, about 2 or 3 inches up and 2 or 3 inches down, and that's going to go right over like that. Okay, now for the sides, so we'll do the same thing on that left side too that I just did on the right. Now the sides are going to go like this, from top to bottom. Again, no fancy cuts. It's going to be similar to the bottom shelf. One continuous 6-inch kind of deep cut, or I should say wide. And it kind of lips over in the front and lips out in the back, just like that. And guess what? The same thing for the top shelf. Well, it's not really a shelf, but the top horizontal part of your shower niche. Kind of like that. Okay. And once you put your Redgard or your waterproofing membrane, liquid membrane over this, under it and over it, it's going to be super solid. All your corners will be taken care of. And then you go ahead and do pretty much the same thing. You'll dry fit everything. And don't forget to label them. Put a little small pencil mark. It can be an arbitrary number, just as long as they line up, so you know which piece goes where. So we're going to take that down now that everything's pre-cut. And I'm going to go ahead and I'll just apply. This is my own preference. You can do what you want here, but I'm just going to apply my first coat of Redgard. Now I did prime my hardy backerboard with diluted Redgard for my first coat. I did a separate video on that. If you want to check that out, search my channel. You can see how that affected the bond strength. Very unofficially, of course. I'm no pro at all, just a do-it-yourself kind of guy. So I'm just applying a first coat of Redgard by brush, because I'm really working it in. I want to make sure that first coat penetrates and gets a good bond. So that's kind of what it looks like. Now this is pretty unsightly. Keep in mind, I just wanted to make a complete monolith with my thin set. I have not applied my fabric yet. All right, so now it is time to apply the fabric. So what I'm going to do is take a liberal amount of Redgard there, and you can see me putting down. You can probably do a little bit more versus less. You want it to saturate. You want that fabric to saturate that Redgard a little bit. for complete adhesion. If you don't have a good bond on the other underside of that, then your fabric could come up or curl at the ends. All right, so I'm laying it down there just like I dry fit. Might get a little messy, but not too bad. That pre-cut is pretty important, right? You can't apply this stuff and then cut your fabric down to size. That's trouble. Things could dry up a little bit. Well, it's not trouble. You'd probably be okay, but things could dry up sooner than you want to. Anyway, so we'll go ahead and press firmly down and get that kind of embedded. And then we'll take some more Redgard and we'll brush that on, taking extra care that that fabric is kind of brushed in an upward way. We don't want it curling or folding during the brushing process. And we want it to stay tight, but not too tight, right? You don't want the corners to kind of, if you brush up too far, the fabric might move and make your corner not at a 90-degree angle anymore. So we'll get a nice coat of that over it and just kind of let that dry. I mean, you can continue. You don't have to let that dry and then continue. We'll keep going here. So I'm doing my corner pieces next, those little 1.5 or 2-inch square corner pieces with the little cut that I showed you earlier. So I'm just positioning those, dropping those in the corner very neatly, as neatly as possible. And that cut just allows it to obviously make that corner a little better, so it sits nicely in that back corner. I don't mind making that cut either because my Redgard will help to seal that up as if I never cut it. Might have to dance a little bit, but all right, so I applied the Redgard over that little piece. It is there. Next, I'll take my other kind of mini side bottom piece, if you will, and position that. And while we're waiting here, I did make a separate video on how thick you should apply Redgard. If you've not checked that video out, I highly recommend it. It's kind of a do-it-yourself look at a very unscientific, but I do kind of do an experiment. How many mils, how many brushes, how many coats does it take to get to your minimum mil requirement for complete waterproof as per the specs for Redgard? So I think that's helpful. Make sure you don't put it on too thick or not thin enough, right, as you're applying Redgard. Kind of a separate topic here, but the point is you don't want to put it on too thick and exceed your mil maximum, because that could cause failure of your Redgard. It could split, it could crack. I'm not really worried about putting it on too thinly at this point, because I'm going to build it up later with subsequent coats. But definitely don't glob it on too thick, because as this stuff dries, it might pull in and create some cracking. So I'm just applying a liberal amount and smoothing it out so that there aren't any hidden kind of globs sitting there, little pockets or bubbles of pooled Redgard, if that makes sense. Everything's pretty smooth. I try to knock down all those brush strokes as much as I can. And we get the side there. Also the top coat on the side piece of fabric. Or the bottom coat, and then the top coat obviously over that. Sped that up for you. Not exactly like watching paint dry. I think you get the picture here in terms of the process and the technique and how you can cut this fabric down to size. But for the sake of a comprehensive video here, if you're looking for a complete step-by-step, we'll keep it going so you can check out the technique and whatnot. Now those back ridges, the brush strokes might be kind of high, so you knock those down a little bit too. And we'll do the same thing with the left side. I like to start at the front there, you saw, and make sure that that's positioned correctly. Now you could fold a crease. This particular fabric didn't crease super well. You could pre-iron it, I suppose, if you wanted to get that crease nice and lined during your dry fit and your pre-cutting stage. But I didn't have too much of a problem with that. You just kind of eyeball it and make sure it's not, crooked. So it's about a 3/4 or an inch up on each fold, and then you finish it up with the Redgard pre and top coat and call it good. Now your vertical seams, incidentally, if you're not sure about how to do that, I'd pretty much do the same thing. Nice liberal undercoat, get it nice and saturated, and a nice liberal overcoat, making sure that it doesn't, as I mentioned earlier, blob or glob and create too much of a thick. You don't want to exceed your mill's requirement, like I said, which, by the way, is 125 according to the manufacturer. And you won't have to worry about it with a brush like this. Just even everything out, knock it down, and you'll be really thin. Actually, you'll need a lot more coats to waterproof it fully. But all right, we will stop the video there, and hopefully it's helped you figure out how to apply this waterproofing fabric, specifically the corners of a shower niche shelf. Thanks so much, and don't forget to subscribe for more do-it-yourself home projects like this. Thanks.